Hello friend, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into love, consciousness and the mystery. And in this episode we're going to be looking at, is calmness something you were born with or something you cultivate? Feeling like you're failing at Ikigai and Dharma? Spiritual people and loneliness? Noticing that you're loved? What does your authentic self look like? Making a home inside yourself, not caring what others think about you, doing your best while remaining open and flexible, what you're filling your heart with, inner strength, seeing through anxiety, and the illusion of self-worth. Now, someone asked me a question on Instagram in response to me talking about meditation, and they say, was calmness always part of your character, or did it develop as you got older? I think I always looked calm, though I wasn't. I remember a dentist once remarking to my mother that I was very phlegmatic. I had to go and look that up. It means kind of unperturbed, unflappable, but that wasn't true. Because I had trauma when I was a kid, I kind of got stuck in freeze a little bit. You know, you've got fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. They're the four kind of major responses to trauma. And freeze is like playing possum. And I got stuck in that. So on the outside, I looked like I was very calm, but on the inside, I wasn't. My mother used to describe it like being a swan, you know, on the surface, very serene, but under the water, legs going like the clappers. She was talking about herself, not me, but it's a good mental image. So as I meditated, I certainly got calmer on the inside, but in one way you get more disturbed on the inside because you can hear what's going on a lot clearer. Like on the meditation training, I use the analogy of you're driving and because you're driving, you can of course only look forward. And in the back, there's a lot of people in the back and they're all talking to you over your shoulder, telling you how you should drive, telling you all sorts of things. And in the beginning, it's very distracting, but after a while you sort of tune them out and you don't really even notice them that much because you're just looking ahead and you're just driving. But if you happen to pull over, suddenly they're all you can hear. And it's kind of the same when you meditate. You kind of get used to the inner chatter. You don't think about it too much. But then when you meditate, it's like suddenly it feels like there's a lot going on in there. So while you become more calm in one way, and another way you become more conscious of the internal chatter. So I have got more calm as I've got older, but like I've said before about the light of consciousness, you know, you're sitting in the dark, you've got an overhead light, there's a circle of light. As you become more conscious, the light goes up and the circle gets bigger, but the edge is always the same. And the edge, you're always revealing your unconsciousness. So it's always kind of awkward and difficult and disturbing. So yes, I've got calmer, but the edge is always the same. And in a way, the light gets bigger, so the amount of unconsciousness you're dealing with is kind of bigger. In response to the question I post on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life at the moment? Somebody said, so much, doing my best to live in Dharma. And then I asked them to elaborate, and they said, this is so kind of you. I love your podcasts. Then they posted the Ikigai diagram and added, it's challenging because in my holistic vision, I feel kind of stuck. I feel I made that much mistakes that it's not my past, it becomes my forever present. Weight of vision being so much of heavy that I need to balance with action. I'm aware of that and I'm living a normal way of life. I just don't want to waste this incarnation, you know? I do see that sometimes we do grasp truth under our own perspective, and most of the time things aren't as it seems. Indeed, truth is truth, but there is always degrees to truth. I saw a pattern where spiritual people would complain about other people not being spiritual, but then everything is spiritual. Same way that everything is under dogma for religious people. I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make. P.S. I admire the way you talk. This is very neat, sophistic. So that's all lovely. Thank you very much. Now, there's two things here. And so let's look at the first thing first. So the first thing is this Dharma and Ikigai, which are very similar when you look into them. Now, if you don't know what Ikigai is, and I knew a bit about it, but not too familiar. It's generally represented by a diagram, like a Venn diagram, with 3 overlapping circles. On the top you have love, what you love. On the bottom you have what you can be paid for. And then to the left you've got what you're good at, and to the right what the world needs. And if you get those 3 circles to overlap, in the center of the overlap is Ikigai. And there are variations to it, like where what you're good at and what you love cross over is passion, where what you love and what the world needs, where they overlap, is mission, where what the world needs and what you can be paid for, where they overlap, it's vocation, and then what you can be paid for and what you're good at, where they overlap, is profession. But it basically adds up. Let me read you the definition. Ikigai is a Japanese word which translated literally would mean what is worth living for. It's a practical tool for all people who want to discover the meaning of life and what makes you wake up with excitement each day. Now, a definition for Dharma, there's no strict definition for Dharma. Dharma is originally a Hindu word, but I think it even predates that. It's a very old word, and people often confuse it with karma, dharma, karma. It's used interchangeably. It's kind of, because it doesn't have a very strict definition, you can use it whatever way you like. It's like a Swiss Army knife of spiritual expressions. The one that I think relates to Ikigai is the path to a balanced and meaningful existence generally requires the holistic pursuit of right actions, material security, material happiness, and spiritual liberation. So it's, you can see how the different things, then they need to kind of come together. It's funny, whenever I say Dharma, it always sounds like somebody from the north side of Dublin calling up the street after somebody called Dermot. Dharma! And that's the same with karma. I always think they're calling caramel. Karma! And while we're on the subject, Kundalini always to me sounds like Con Delaney. Irish name, first name Con, second name Delaney, Con Delaney. And then Krishnamurti, always, whenever I always hear Christy Murphy. Anyway, I'm getting off the topic, but it always makes me smile. I think the main thing here is for this person, the real line that stood out for me was where they're saying, I don't want to waste this incarnation. Well, everybody has that feeling in some way or another. They mightn't put it in those words, but they sort of feel like they don't want to waste their life. And it's a very easy thing to do, to waste your life. You probably know lots of people who've just sort of walked through their whole life. And you can kind of see it at some point, maybe towards the end, if they're lucky, they'll kind of go, what's happening? Where did it go? Where did the time go? Where did my life go? And they're always putting memes on the internet of not memes, but, top 10 things people who are near the end of life say they regret, that kind of thing. So the fact that you are saying, I don't want to waste this incarnation, that's great. And these different structures, Ikigai, Dharma, doesn't matter what structure it is, they're all beautiful and they're all helpful, but they're all old. And there's great wisdom in things from the past. I'm always gone on about the Tao of Being and how I get so much out of it. And that's like a 2,000 or 3,000 year old book. It just speaks to me. But it's the particular translation of it that speaks to me. But you have to remember that you are the latest iteration of consciousness. Because the thing to get is that these structures are just that. They're not rules that you have to follow. There was a time when they needed to be followed, but not now. Because life is very messy now, very complicated. And you are the latest iteration of consciousness. You're the most up-to-date version, the most evolved. I know it doesn't feel like that. It certainly doesn't feel like it to me, but we are. And you can take the wisdom from these structures, and when you hear them, something will resonate with you and go, oh, okay, Ikigai, that makes sense. The coming together of all these different things, holistic approach, beautiful. And Dharma, get all these different things to come together, living the essence of who I am. Beautiful. But remembering that there's never been a consciousness like yours before. And how you interpret, how you interact with, how you embody these things is of utmost importance. No one else can do it like you. You only have to look at Tibet. It's a great example of ancient civilization. Brilliant truths, fantastic rules, so beautiful, so spiritual, so wonderful. Yet, when the Chinese decided to invade, they couldn't do anything about it. And I'm not saying I don't know what they should have done, but it's just a good example of the modern world, the world you were born into, the world I was born into, is complicated, and we have to take the past and forge the new with it, bring it into the new consciousness. That's no judgment on Tibet, but Tibet's a really good example of meditating and withdrawing, and it didn't work for them. Maybe there's a bigger picture there I can't see, but for me the main thing is that's all beautiful. Meditation's beautiful. Spiritual life is beautiful. It's all gorgeous, but there has to be a way of moving in the world to take care of everything. So when you look at these old structures, remember that they're old, and it's how you apply them that makes the difference. That's how you you extract the wisdom out of them and you apply them now. And because you're at the cutting edge of consciousness, it's always going to be messy, It's always going to be a bit awkward, a bit difficult, a bit fuzzy around the edges. So if you know that there's never been a consciousness like you before, then you can view all these old ancient structures and not let your mind get in there and add to or create this idealized version of you that you should be living. And if you're not living it, you're failing. Don't let your mind do that. Take the wisdom, have it as a general thing to aim for, and your life will go more in that direction. But to kind of sit in the power that you are of, I'm the latest version, and it's never been done this way before. So the way you do it. And then the second thing you were asking about, spiritual people complaining about other people not being spiritual enough. That to me always looks like loneliness. The normal, everyday loneliness that everybody has. That we look out and the outside world doesn't reflect who we are on the inside. And there's no sense of connection with it. And we feel like strangers in a strange land. Now, whether that is, I love train spotting, I love pigeons, I love flowers, and nobody else seems to love them like I do. I love teddy bears, and nobody seems to be into it as much as me. It doesn't really matter what. And the spiritual version of that is like, why can't people be more spiritual? Why can't I talk to people who are on the same page as me? It comes from that feeling of loneliness, I think. When you recognize that, I mean, the benefit of being interested in spirituality and consciousness is that you have a much better chance of seeing it for what it is, which is loneliness. And the more you stop looking outside yourself for any deficit you feel like you have on the inside, like I need people to talk to me in a certain way so that I can feel a certain way on the inside. In consciousness and spiritual life will always pressure that, will always push you to see that that's not true, that you've got everything inside you all the time. It's just a matter of whether you can access it or not. If you'd like to write to me, like that person, like those other people, john@furtheremergence.com, or you can reach me through the socials. I am pretty much everywhere. Any social you can think of, I'm probably on it somewhere. As well as writing to me, you can sign up for my friendly notes. Go to furtheremergence.com. I send out friendly notes every Sunday, and they are lovely. If you want to expand your consciousness, I have a smorgasbord of trainings. Meditation, the psychic world, space for the mystery. They're all beautiful. They're all on the website, and you're very welcome. Now, let's have a look at the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. The reason I look at the memes is, number one, I like them. Number two, they prompt me. I never know what I'm going to say when I do this bit, but they bring out things in me that probably I wouldn't say. They sort of trigger something in me or glimmer something in me. I just heard about that recently, the difference between being triggered and glimmered. Glimmered is like the opposite of a trigger. Trigger is generally like when something happens and it brings up unpleasant emotions on the inside. Why did that person say that thing to me? You know, that kind of thing. Glimmer is the opposite, where something happens and it makes you kind of glow a bit on the inside and connects you to love and truth and beauty. And I think the memes do that for me. They bring it up, and then I glow a bit at you, verbally. Okay, so the first one I wrote, it's called "It's All For You." That's the big writing at the top. The sun got up early this morning just so it could flood your bedroom as you awoke. The birds have been practicing in secret to sing just that song, just when you needed to hear it. The wind has been searching for the lightest air to blow in your direction. And the moon can't wait to light your night again. All this and so much more fills the crevices of each day you are here. It's all for you. It's all love. How different would the day go if you could remember that all day long? I remember it a lot, but not as much as I could. It's certainly not 24 hours a day. Okay, I'm asleep for 8 of them. Whatever that is, 16. It's not 16 hours a day that I'm aware of it. I get glimmered, for sure, where I kind of see something and go, wow, there's nobody else around to see this. That's just for me. It's a beautiful thing to experience and register. It's all for you. And you could go, well, it would happen if I wasn't here. You don't know that. But what you do know is it did happen and you were there. And you can see that as an expression of love, that you are loved. That rainbow came out just for you. And it's so funny, like, isn't when something like that happens, we look around for somebody else. Did you see this? Do you see this beautiful rainbow? Instead of just receiving it for what it is. A little gift just for you. The little lamb, the smile, the little flower coming up between the cracks in the concrete. The wonderful, magical things. There's so many of them happen each day. And they're all just for you. I didn't write the next one, but it's very good. It says, who are you when nobody's watching? That is a very penetrating question. And the more you let that settle in, you begin to get glimpses of it. Because the answer to that question can be very different from one person to the next and one moment to the next. Because depending on what goes on, because people are quite distracting. We are cautious of people. We present and we respond as authentically as possible, and sometimes that is not very authentic at all because we've had experience, we've had trauma, we've had things happen. We're careful. We're cautious. We watch. We respond. And then we want to have our say. We want to make a good impression. We want to be thought of well, all of which is very distracting. And then when you find yourself on your own, a lot of the time, you can be just processing the interactions that you had. But when that dies down, then you begin to get a glimpse of who are you when no one's watching. If you really want to get into it, you can make eye contact with yourself in the mirror and hold it. Hold it for as long as you can. It's a little bit weird because you have to pick an eye. It's hard to maintain eye contact with your reflection because which eye am I going to look at? But when you get over that, and you just ease your peripheral vision and really look, you can really begin to see who you are when no one's watching. Next one's a beautiful poem by Julie Frehenbacher. It's called The Most Important Thing. And I love this poem. I am making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness where everything is forgiven, everything allowed, a quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out without hurry, where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fiercely friendly place I can claim as my very own. I'm throwing arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault finding, falling apart, unfinished parts, knowing every seed and weed, every drop of rain has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a hot cup of tea, gather around the warmth of my own blazing fire. I will howl if I want to, knowing this flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance, a shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper hallelujah to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom. So beautiful. And that's what I wish for you, that you make a home inside yourself if you haven't already. Me too. I'm always working on it. I'm always adding bits and pieces to it on the inside. Because in a way, each trauma you let go of, each bit of unconsciousness that transforms into consciousness, adds to the palace inside, the cozy place inside you, that you and I are all eventually returning to. I mean, we go there every night in deep dreamless sleep, but we don't bring our consciousness with us when we do that. We come back from it and we're refreshed. But this idea of making a home inside yourself is such a beautiful, true thing. And Julie has just written this poem so well. It's so heartwarming to read those words and to connect in with the energy of it. And it's a beautiful thing to do. And as I say, I wish that for you and me. Next one is a picture of the planet Pluto. It says, this is Pluto. Pluto used to be the 9th planet of the solar system until 2006, when scientists removed it from the list and declared it a dwarf planet. But Pluto continued orbiting the sun as before. Pluto doesn't care what others think about it. Be like Pluto. I think that's such a good example of not caring what other people think. Because Pluto is completely oblivious to the fact that the scientists have renamed it. It doesn't even know it's called Pluto, you know? Can you imagine if you didn't know what your name was? If you had that level of just being natural, of just being yourself, of being your own Dharma, as that person was asking earlier on. Of just being yourself so much. Because often it's very hard to know who you are, because so much of what we do is in reaction to things that people have said to us in the past, this morning, over breakfast, or 40 years ago. It's very hard to see what's there when all that gets taken out of the way. So remembering Pluto, not caring, just continuing on being itself, while other people run around making proclamations about it, is a lovely reminder of a way of being that's there for us all. Next one is by Maya Angelou, that wonderful writer. She says, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. There's so much wisdom packed into that. Because what's wonderful about that is it doesn't arrive anywhere. And that's what we need now, more than ever. I'm saying that a lot lately. Now, more than ever, what we need is not arriving anywhere. Doing your best until you know better. Which is another way of saying getting more information. Because we desperately want to arrive somewhere, a point of certainty. And there's no space for certainty anymore. What there is it's actually the scientific method, the original scientific method, not the one that's been bought and co-opted. The original one of everything is a best working theory until if new information comes around, comes to light, then the old thing can be let go of in favor of new information. But the new information doesn't become written in stone because further information may arise, and then that can change. And that's the way we have to be now. I always think it's like transitioning from written in stone to a whiteboard. Like everything I know to be true is written on a whiteboard. It's not written in stone. Because my consciousness is growing all the time, just like yours is. And what was true today or yesterday might be different in a week because of new things that arise inside me. And if I've got them written in stone, it's going to be very hard to change. Whereas if it's written on a whiteboard, I just wipe it out. It's no big deal. And write the new thing in. Maybe I'll keep 60% of what was there before, but the other 40%, well, that's not appropriate anymore. It doesn't work anymore because I've got this new information. And when you have that kind of ease without being able to change with new information, then you don't get into defending positions, because maybe somebody's got something to say that will reveal something that you didn't know before. And to be open to everything and to be discerning and to take the seemingly audacious position that you are the arbiter of what's true, that it all lands with you, and that you can decide and you can be discerning, and that you're open to new information. And then when you get new information, you can do better. And you don't give yourself a hard time about what you did in the past. You just keep aiming towards doing better. The more I know, the better I can do. The next one says, what are you filling your heart with? This question is so important. And it is. What are you filling your heart with? No, really, what are you filling your heart with? Have a think about it. It's a great question to ask yourself, because you can begin to see, oh, I'm actually filling my heart with fear. I'm actually filling my heart with despair. Oh no, I'm actually filling my heart with hopelessness. And you could say, well, it's hopeless, it's despairing, it's fearful. And that is one perspective, for sure. And it's not to close your heart from that. But that's different to what you're filling your heart with. You can see something or hear about something and be very disturbed by it. And your heart can break. And I encourage you to let it break. Let it break right open. Feel it. Don't turn away from it. Feel it as much as is there, as long as you can. But that's different to what you're filling your heart with. What you're filling your heart with is what your response to that is. Because if your heart breaks, that means you care. And you're like, but I don't want to care. I don't want to care because it hurts too much. And I would encourage you to see that's where the courage is required. The courage to feel and to not stop feeling. To let yourself feel it all. And fill your heart with love. Because love is the only thing that's going to get us through. It's the only thing that's going to get you through and me through. What hurts is your unconsciousness. The love doesn't actually hurt. Okay? What comes on top of that is your unconsciousness. So if you fill your heart with love, your heart's already full of love, but when you can put a lot of other things in on top of that, like fear and despair and hopelessness and all this kind of thing. But you can fill your heart with the recognition of what's already in there, which is love. And that will change you. And the more you change, the more everything else changes. We're changing. We're transitioning from force to power. And the power is love. We've tried it all. We've tried all the other stuff. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked at all. So let's try love. Next one says, can we please stop associating strength with someone's ability to smile through tears and suffer in silence? Strength is being brave enough to talk about what's hurting you on the inside. This is great. And of course it's true. Very difficult to do though. On both sides. It's very difficult to talk about what's hurting you, and it's very difficult to hear about what's hurting someone else. And that's why we all walk around smiling through our tears and pretending that everything is okay, because it's difficult. But if you can be brave enough to talk about what's hurting you, a lot of the times people will respond with great kindness and understanding. It's not always going to go well. Sometimes it can be too triggering for other people, and you can get all sorts of terrible reactions. But that's part of the courage required to be authentic. When you talk about what's really hurting you, it eases it a lot on the inside. And if you do say it to somebody and they react badly, just forget about it, move on, but keep talking about it. The more we can talk about what's hurting us, the more we can all heal. The next one says, you are bigger than what is making you anxious. And it's true. You're a lot bigger than what's making you anxious. Now, that's not to say being anxious isn't difficult. It can be unbearable. It can cover you from head to foot. It can make you be in a cold sweat, have the hairs on your whole body standing up. It can be all you can think about. It can grip you in the stomach. I know. But you are much bigger than that. And you know you are, because when you go into deep dreamless sleep, there's no anxiety, there's no fear, there's none of the things that normally bother you. There's no heartbreak, there's no hopelessness, and you come back from there and you're refreshed. So you know that wherever you go is a good place. And part of it is knowing that in your essence you are not these things. You're not anxiety. You are much bigger than that. And knowing that makes dealing with anxiety a little bit easier. It's the difference between feeling like I am anxious and there is anxiety in me. The next one says, resist the temptation to seek evidence of your value outside yourself. Seeking validation through things or people only distracts us from seeing ourselves clearly. You were born worthy and lovable. Nothing can add to or take from that. And this speaks to the whole idea of self-worth. Because people can talk about, oh, I don't have a lot of self-worth, or I'm working on my self-worth. And we all kind of know what that means, and we kind of go, yeah, I don't think my self-worth is up there either. Missing the fact that self-worth is an unattainable thing. And we kind of go, oh, well, when my self-worth comes up a little bit, then I'll be able to do this, whatever. You can never achieve self-worth because it's so vague. How do you know you've achieved it? It's not measurable in any way. So it's this nebulous thing that'll always be there in the distance. You can never get to self-worth. So I'd encourage you to let go of the idea of self-worth and trying to increase your self-worth. But this idea of knowing that you were born complete and worthy, that's a different thing. That's all you have to do is look at a baby and register how you feel. All the things you feel when you look at a baby of sweetness, love. Something pours out of you when you look at a baby. And if you register that and you turn it on yourself, you too were once a baby. You too are loved for no reason other than just who you are. The next one says, the happiest you've been isn't the happiest you'll be. This one got a lot of response on the Instagram feed. And it's beautiful. It's like one of those little things you drop into your mind and it jams up the gears of like, oh, just going along, it's all going along, not as great as it was. And because it's quantifiable, you can go, the happiest you've been. We can all think about the happiest we've been. It's pretty accessible. It mightn't be great. You might go, that was the happiest I was, but it wasn't very good. Okay, or it might have been the high point of your life. And then this, to add to it, the happiest you've been isn't the happiest you will be. Meaning, it's in front of you. The happiest you'll be is in front of you, and it could happen in the next moment. That changes everything on the inside. It changes the way it resets you towards the future. It sets the sails of your little boat in a slightly different way. And you start to look for it expectantly. And when you look for it expectantly, you've got a lot better chance of seeing it. That's all I have for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.